So let me just note that being a human being is a very hard experience as well as it is beautiful. And people tend to overwhelm themselves with the idea that they are supposed to always be happy. They're supposed to always be positive. And there is a way to use your negativity, your painful thoughts, your trauma, your experiences to help yourself grow, right? So like, we all have character defects. We have things that, we don't really love about ourselves that make us insecure. We have things that have happened to us and therefore caused a filter over our lives and how we perceive things because of the trauma that we endured. And look, I think to a degree, every human being has experienced some form of trauma. I don't want to say every single one, but we all have different versions of trauma, right? So like, somebody could literally break their ankle and it be extremely traumatic based off how they perceive trauma and how they deal with trauma, what they consider to be trauma. Somebody else could have something happen like they're kidnapped, right? And that's what we would assume is a bigger trauma. But in general, both of them could experience to a degree that is almost the same based off of how they deal with trauma. So our trauma responses kind of filter how we live our lives, and then sometimes that brings on character defects or things that are more of a survival tactic. Like for me, one of the biggest things I tend to do is I tend to tell stories about things that have happened to me in order to spread awareness and talk about what I've been through, but there is an emotional disconnect to it. And I always thought if I shove it down and I disconnect myself from it, I distance myself from it, I won't hurt, right? So when my sister passed away, I did not grieve openly. I talked about her a lot. I felt a lot of pain. I was actually so traumatized when she died that I had to have people walk me to my car at night after work because I was such a mess that I couldn't make it to my car alone. I wanted to drive behind people. I would cry on the way home. Some weeks I wouldn't cry at all. I did a lot of weird things. I ended up getting into spirituality, and that is actually what helped me function for a while, because I found this type of higher power that I had been looking for and didn't know was really there. Like, I had always prayed and done these things in Christianity, but I didn't know if I necessarily always believed it. So once my sister passed away, I developed a firm belief in spirituality and my higher power, right? So that took a lot of effort if it took my sister passing away. Then after that point, I started to experience this type of need to go and make people get better and help them find treatment and make sure they get better themselves and help people that were in addiction, because my sister died of an overdose. So I started Breaking Chains, the Whitney Project. Now at the same time, I was going through and just had entered a grief counseling program, and they decided that I needed more counseling, more help, different type of management. And I wasn't very accepting at first of the idea that I needed help, because, well, I was 2 years clean, so why did I need so much help when I was grieving, passing narcotics as a nurse? And it wasn't really bothering me, but there was this emotional response that I could feel every day, right? And I'm at work because I had gotten my license as a nurse the day that my sister passed away, which was almost like my higher power trying to say, something really bad happened today, but I'm going to give you something good so you can push through. And I remember I was in a really abusive relationship, and I traveled to Lilydale with my ex, and I felt like everything was going to change. I did. And I started to feel lifted, like my life was going to transition into another phase, which it absolutely did. I ended up leaving him, meeting Tyler, and then going through the next 3 years with Tyler. And I don't want to pretend that's been roses or beautiful or perfect. It has not by any means. We are very different people. We're in very different phases of our life, and trying to connect those pieces has been really hard. He's gone through his own deaths. So when he went through a death of a loved one, I didn't really know how to handle it because I still hadn't fully accepted that my sister was dead. you know? So it was really hard. And Whitney, like, I had a lot of anger towards her. So when I read this book called I Don't Want to Be an Empath Anymore, it made me start to think about the anger that was still instilled in me. So I started to do some shadow work, and I started to kind of write through, like, her passing away. I wrote her letters. I started to find the details in these memories that I had forgotten, because that is what makes them real, right? That's what brings the emotion back to them. So I wrote about that, and I talked with my trauma counselor, or my trauma therapist, and she is amazing, okay? At first, she was not even willing to start trauma work with me at 6 years in unless I felt safe in my environment. By safe, I don't mean like I'm going to get beat up or I'm going to get hurt or even mentally abused. Safe by, like, I know that I can openly react to the trauma and grieve the trauma and let it out and still feel loved and acknowledged, and that I will be supported. So we started the trauma work about 8 weeks ago, and since then, like, she has taught me quite a lot about, like, how toxic positivity isn't always isn't what we should really be looking at, right? So, like, our emotions, we have many emotions, and we are allowed to feel those and mark those and understand what they mean. And if you are very sensitive and you do feel other people's emotions, you will understand that certain people may drain your energy, right? And that's something that I definitely go through. Sometimes it's the people in my home, sometimes it's people outside of my home. And my son, you know, he's a couple months old. He gives me extreme good energy, very good energy. And I love that about him. I love that I can pick up my little baby and feel like my world is just better and everything is light. And same with my daughter. Like, my daughter, she instills a different kind of energy. It's not the same as my son's. But when she is happy and I'm happy, she's happy, we very much so bounce off each other. Now, if I'm anxious, she's anxious and she bugs me and she's up my butt, you know? So, like, this is where the trauma work comes in. If you figure out what triggers you, right? You figure out what triggers these responses in you. A lot of people that relapse, they go, I don't know why I relapsed. But if you look at the timeline, say 2 months prior was the day that their sibling passed away, and they had met up with somebody who knew their sibling, and this person was still using. So they said, oh, I can't be around you. It's nice to see you. If you want help, let me know. And they leave. So a couple days goes by, and they start to feel really down. They start to crave a little bit. They may not even know it's cravings. And then suddenly it's been a couple months, and all you know, out of nowhere, somebody comes up and goes, hey, you know, do you want to buy off me? And they're, say, in the middle of, like, a city, and they buy it, right? They do it. They go and they do it right away. They don't even think about it. There's no stopping. There's no thinking through it, because they've already been triggered for a while. And instead of working through that trigger or acknowledging it when it happened, they actually just kind of pretended it didn't, because they didn't even recognize it. And that's where our self-awareness becomes so extreme and so needed. Because if you're not self-aware, it's going to be really hard for you in this world. And I don't want to hurt anyone who is not self-aware, who hasn't learned themselves yet. But, like, I have learned a lot about my triggers, a lot about the things I do that are extremely toxic, and how to try and manage them. I've learned how to be myself in situations that I didn't necessarily want to be myself in, that I was covering up or I was pretending in, you know, just to make people happy. A lot of times I did things just to look good or to look like I was doing well, and I wasn't doing bad, but I wasn't being honest about my actual internal thoughts, or how depressed I was, or how angry I was at my sister because she died on me, and she was my best friend for a while. You know, we were not the same. We were not really always alike. We lived a very similar life, and we were very close, but we were not the same people. And that's where this goes into, you know, there is this main thought that, like, if we think positively, we are always going to do well, but that can be toxic. Thinking positively all the time and doing positive affirmations will change your life, but then you're blocking out all the darkness inside of you and the shadow side of you and not acknowledging it or accepting it. And that's what it takes to grow, right? So like when you start to love the parts of yourself that you don't like, they will start to change or become a part of you as a whole. And I don't know how to explain that, but we all have issues, right? And there's things about ourselves that we do not like. When we start to understand that this is who we are and we accept that about ourselves, we write about it. We write about our triggers. We write about the first memory that really scarred us, where like a parent didn't acknowledge us or say something we wanted to hear, and like we're living this life, right? And we wanted to be seen, but we weren't. And we would write about these memories, these traumas, these things that happened to us that really affected us deeply. We start to accept them and understand why, right? And then we start to see in ourselves the triggers. Now I see why I do this. Now I see why I do that. So this is very important for some of you who have not developed a sense of self-awareness, or maybe have and want to explore a little bit deeper. Read the book, I Don't Want to Be an Empath Anymore. It's really good. Aside from that, just be open with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Be willing to do things that you don't like. Go to therapy. Even if you don't like therapy and you've never had a good counselor, a lot of times it's because you are not being open-minded. And I'm not saying that the counselor was great, but if you have an open mind, you can learn from anything. That's the truth. Your mindset can destroy you. So it's okay to be sad. It is okay to observe that you are upset or you have an emotion, and to go deeper into what those emotions are called and work through them, write about them, and then let them out, right? Let them fly away into the universe, because letting them out is what's important. You're making more room for good. You're making more room for the positivity by working through the darkness. And the thing is, there has to be a healthy balance in life. There's good and bad, dark and light. There's always opposites. So just remember, we shouldn't be judging each other. We all have problems. We are all human. We all love. We all have things that can destroy us, things that can make us better. And the point of being alive, the point of recovery, the point of all of this is growth, okay? If you are continuously growing in your program, whatever that program is, you are in recovery. When you start to stop growing and you get complacent and you don't want to work on yourself anymore because it's working the way it is right now, you're not willing to try medication if you need it, you're not willing to try therapy if you need it, you're not willing to try any of these other avenues, that is when you stop growing. So don't automatically just check every box off and say it's not possible. You are possible to become a better version of yourself. That version of yourself is already in you. It's waiting for you to let it out. So accept who you are, accept the things that hurt you, accept what happened, take responsibility for the parts that were you, and move forward. And don't be the person that you wouldn't want to be around. I mean, what's the point in that? So, alright guys, I love you. I got my teeth fixed, so I don't mind talking. I still got to get a cap put on, but it's okay. And I'm doing some really amazing stuff that's coming up about my life and something I've been through. And you guys will see, because I'll probably talk about it when it's happening. But for now, I have to wait for all the details on this. And it could be absolutely amazing. You guys will see. Don't worry. And on top of that, I also did just get a job at a rehab facility. If everything goes through, I start soon. And there's also with that too, right? Like I had to do a fingerprinting, I had to do a drug screen, I had to do paperwork, all of that's good, but like also I've been in the criminal justice system. Is that going to be an issue for me as a recovering addict? These are questions that I hate asking myself, because normally in these situations I would say I'm in recovery, and I'm not really sure why I didn't tell her that in the interview, because it is a rehab facility, but I'm so used to just like sliding by as a nurse and just like pretending I have this perfect normal life. I was never an addict. I never did this, almost acting like I've always been this way, right? Because that is very distant from me. I am not that person anymore. But sometimes it's just better to openly say who you were, who you are, and who you want to be, right? And people will then feel like you're not hiding anything. So, I don't know. I should have said that. I'm a little nervous about it. My brain goes like this. My therapist tells me, like, my brain never shuts off. That's okay. But hopefully this interview goes through, everything's good, and I start soon, because these are literal dreams that I have had for years that are happening, and the trauma work has helped, and all these things have helped my relationship. My life is just getting better and better. And you guys have always supported me through this. So Whitney would be thankful for you. Whitney would want you guys to get your own help and your own growth. She's happy for me. I'm happy for her wherever she is helping me. And, you guys are worth the best life you could possibly live. So don't tell yourself you're not. Don't write your own self off. Because you are all you have at the end of the day. You have other people, but how are you going to love other people as closely if you're still learning to love yourself and there isn't much in there? I do believe you can love people, but we all have our own versions of love, right? And that version can be more whole if you learn to love yourself as much as you possibly can and grow in learning yourself. I don't expect you to just love yourself in a day, but I do expect you guys to work on building your self-confidence and walking in a room and being willing to talk with anybody and not have an issue with it, right? Like, just willing to be confident in who you are. I don't think you have to talk to anyone. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you have to build this energy up so people can feel you. People can feel your presence, your confidence for you. So you feel whole. All right. I love you guys. Accept yourself for who you are and work on the things you don't like, and just continue to grow in your recovery and stop wasting your time on drugs. It is never going to help you. I don't care what program you're in, what you do to get help, but get off the drugs. The drugs are literally going to just suck the life out of you, and that is it. And your family will regret it. They will be angry, and now I'm ranting, but I love you guys, and I want to see you in the same position, chasing your dreams, doing anything you want to do in this life, because we already survived some crazy stuff, right? We already had to climb to the top in order to get to a normal place a lot of people are already at. So you're a survivor, you're a fighter, and keep fighting. Stop relapsing, do the work, get there. Go to AA, go to NA, go to whatever makes you grow and makes you feel like it works, right? And sometimes we gotta do different things. So, you are human. You will make mistakes, but this is really important because we are amazing and we can do anything we want. I'll see you at the finish line.